And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host Andrew Johnson. And Johnson, we've gone through the first round of the NBA postseason. We now head into the second round of the NBA playoffs. Round two starting just last night. We had two games in both one in the East, one in the West. That will continue later on tonight as of this recording on April 22nd. That is Tuesday, 2026, and a very interesting first round of the NBA postseason. We had some, I would say, some fine series for the most part. There were some series that maybe were a little bit less desirable, but for the most part, some big talking points going into the second round of the playoffs. And I now need to find a new NBA champion based off of my first round predictions, but I'll get into that in a little bit later. Any takeaways before we go into it about the playoffs so far?
No, let's just go straight into it, Nick, and let's start with the Western Conference and get the most anticlimactic series out of the way. The 4-0 sweep, Thunder over Spurs. Every game non-competitive.
You mean the
Close.
Suns?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Thunder over Suns. Excuse me. Spurs are still
yeah.
spoilers. Spurs are still playing in the NBA
Yeah, those
postseason.
those two series were just both the Spurs and the Thunder series were just pretty
Well, the
much.
Spurs at least had a little bit of juice, but we'll go into that in a
Yeah,
second.
yeah, that's fair.
But yeah,
But
there was absolutely nothing redeemed about this Thunder Sun series. I mean,
no,
from start to finish, it was just all OKC. I mean, they couldn't even get a single digit loss on here. I think maybe the last game was 131 to 122,
it
and
didn't
but
really feel like it.
yeah, it was just Shea just doing Shea things. 34 points a game, 55% from the field. No one could really stop him on the other team. And then when you take a look at the Suns, like you kind of feel bad because, you
They're
know,
rebuilding.
yeah, they're rebuilding, whatever. And Devin Booker was doing okay. It wasn't like he was lighting the world on fire here. And then Dylan Brooks had his moments. I think he was really a lot better than Devin Booker this series between the defense and the scoring and the
Mhm.
efficiency. I would say I couldn't even blame him because he really stepped up.
Yeah, I think for the Suns, I mean, we expected them at the beginning of the season probably not to make the playoffs because they were building stages, but they exceeded expectations, and having guys like Brooks and Devin Booker definitely help.
So
But
the one thing I want to talk about though, Nick, is Grayson Allen because DNP by the coach the last two games of the series.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely a little bit surprising because he was a big role player slash starter for this team for a good portion
Yeah, played
of the
51
season.
games, and then he's getting DNPs in the playoffs perfectly healthy. Nothing's wrong with him.
Yeah, yeah, Suns are in for some interesting times. I mean, they're still trying to figure out what their identity is. I guess at this point with this roster, obviously that window of them winning the championship a couple years ago, where they lost to Milwaukee, has closed, but they're trying to reopen a new window. Getting a first round experience for these guys helps, but they just looked lifeless against this Thunder team, and pretty much more ways than one. The defending champions for a reason, but we'll see if that success goes for the Thunder in the second round. I really don't have much more about this series. I know, obviously, with the 4-0 series, really, there's not much really to talk about. You mentioned the Spurs and Trailblazers series. I think the really big juice into that series was Portland steals game two on the road. That, of course, also was coupled on with Wembanyama getting hurt with a concussion. So he had to miss a couple. I think he missed one or two games of this series. I know he missed one for sure. I don't remember if he missed two. But regardless, Portland in that game three tied series had a chance to win the game. They were up in that game, and then they just had an
Oh
epic
yeah, they
collapse.
were up at the half.
Yeah.
They really had a chance to rally at home, go up 2-1, and really try to rewrite history here. But Spurs legend, I guess you want to call him Stefan Castle. I don't know if he's a legend yet. And
Not
Dylan
yet.
Harper
He's
during
getting
that
there.
game. Dylan Harper, it was an absolute masterclass. Uh, really, you can make an argument that he's outplaying De'Aaron Fox right now. You can make
Yeah.
that argument. I mean, I know Fox is the starter; he's getting starters minutes, but Harper has really stepped up during this postseason. Like he's insanely efficient. He's a great defender, and he's really a de facto six man right now.
Yeah, and he had to step up a lot with Wembanyama getting hurt. I do remember I did mix up the games. The Trailblazers were winning at halftime in Game 3, but then they lost. The collapse that I was speaking about was in Game 4. They had a double-digit halftime lead, and then they were outscored in both the third and fourth quarter by a wide margin. Would not be the first time this playoff we saw a team with a double-digit halftime lead lose it in the second half. We'll talk about that a little bit later, probably in the Eastern Conference to mention, but there were a couple of moments for the Trailblazers team in this series, and I think that's really surprising considering after what happened for them at the beginning of the season. You and I really didn't think they were going to be going into the playoffs entirely when we did our play-in predictions, and they exceeded expectations a lot this season. Tiago Split deserves a lot of credit. Don't know what his status is for next season, but he really showed that maybe he could be a future NBA head coach for the next couple of years.
Yeah, he really deserves the chance to either coach in Portland or coach elsewhere. When this is a roster for the last couple of years were laughing stocks, and now all of a sudden they've really turned it on. It's it was proven that it was the coaching from day one.
Yeah.
Like it was the coaching from day one, especially when you had the whole gambling probe, and I don't know what's going to happen. People are probably going to go to prison. Uh, but yeah, you have a disgraced legacy, and you have a just maybe the start of an excellent head coaching career for Tiago Splitter. He's got a great mind for the game, and Portland should not be here. They should have been the 14 or 15 seed,
Right.
but they had a chance to knock off the Spurs, which, in my opinion, were the best team during the regular season. They were better than the Celtics. They were better than the Pistons. They were better than the Thunder. They were the best team during the regular season, and they had them on the ropes for a couple times there.
Yeah, and I think you also find maybe a potential emerging star for them in Denny Avdia, who had a tremendous season for this Trailblazers team. Made the All Star game this year too, but like you said, like no one expected this team to be a playoff team, let alone a play-in team. They were expected to be a 14, 15 seed probably, and now we'll get to see where they go from here. They have a really interesting roster, I would say, for the most part. You have some emerging stars, some well seasoned veterans at this point, but they just weren't ready just yet. They're facing a really tough. They faced a really tough San Antonio team in the first round, and the Spurs move on into the second round of the postseason. I think the next series, Johnson, we talk about maybe the Lakers and the Rockets, considering what happened in that series. Houston losing the first three games of this series, despite the fact that the Lakers didn't have Luka Doncic in this one. They didn't have Austin Reeves for the first couple of games of this series either, and yet LeBron James just was putting up some fantastic numbers in the first three games of this series. But then we got to game 4 and game 5, and things were starting to turn a little bit in terms of Houston's favor. And I think if you were a Laker fan, you were probably a little bit scared that they were going to become the first NBA team to blow a 3-0 lead and lose the series, despite everything that was going right for them the first three games. And then game 6 happened, and the Lakers just embarrassed them on both sides. The Rockets could not shoot. The Lakers just didn't have to do too much in game 6 to win game 6. The Rockets put up 78 points in that game. They lose in 6 games, 98-78. I think for me, Johnson, this is going to be a very interesting offseason because Kevin Durant did not play in this entire series. So that's one thing to note, too, for this. But what does this do to a guy like Ime Udoka, who's been, so some people a well-respected coach, and the Rockets coming off a 2 seed last year, expecting a lot more expectations this season, and they are out of the first round of playoffs.
Well, you got to realize they didn't have Fred VanVleet, so they're missing him the entire season. They're missing Stephen Adams a large portion of the season, and Kevin Durant didn't play in the postseason. So there's a lot of asterisks here. If the Rockets had won a couple more games, it easily could have been a 4 seed or a 3 seed. So let's not get that twisted right now. Like they easily could have been in the Nuggets position. And I think this is not really a question for Ime. This is more of a question for Kevin Durant. I think this is my hot take. Kevin Durant is going to be the first Hall of Famer not to have a single jersey retired by one of his teams. This guy has now quit on every single one of the teams he's been on.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy because this is one of the most talented basketball players that ever lived. He's gonna be 38 years old at the beginning of next season. He's gonna play. I can't see why he wouldn't play because he just put up 26, 5, and 5 on
he'll play.
52% this past
Yeah,
year,
he's gonna
almost on
play.
50, 40, 90 splits. So, like, he'd be crazy not to play. I don't know where he's going to play. It's definitely not going to be in Houston. But this is a guy,
I mean,
he's got an MVP. He has multiple rings. He's
yeah,
finals MVP, multiple all NBA teams, all star game MVP, all NBA, top 75, the anniversary team. And on the Olympics too. He was the Olympics MVP. But this guy, his legacy is no matter where he went, he quit. He quit on Oklahoma City. He quit on Golden State. He quit on Brooklyn. He quit on Phoenix. And now he's quit on Houston. So
yeah.
his legacy is he's the greatest quitter of all time.
I
He's a
remember
guy
there
that
was
has
that.
fallen upwards every single year. And no matter how easy it is for him, he quits.
There was that whole thing during the All Star break where people thought he was on his burner and he was making fun of his teammates.
He was.
So I don't know what the future holds for him, if it's back in Houston next season or not. Um, yeah, it's really tough to decide if he would have a jersey retired by what team. I don't know what it would be. I would say maybe OKC, but that
I think
franchise
if
really burned
he
badly.
spurned him. He spurned him.
Yeah,
And by the way, Shea's their guy. So
that's
Shea
true.
brought them a championship. He's an MVP. He's going to be there for the foreseeable future.
There's there's obviously more,
And
allegiance
Westbrook is
towards
way more.
Westbrook. Yep, that's what I
Yeah.
was gonna go with. Yeah. Yep.
So to me, even though
Um.
he may be the best player to ever put an Oklahoma City jersey, he's not the most important. And he's not going to be the first to get the jersey retired.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. And obviously on the other side of things, LeBron doing this at this point. I know you're not a huge fan of LeBron, but I'm not saying I'm the biggest fan of him either.
No,
I think
listen.
I've got to
Listen.
respect the game.
The way it works is when LeBron was putting up 27 a game, the average point scored was between 95 to 100 points a game. Now it's 117. So you talk about roughly a 20% variance. So for the kids that aren't really that great at math, means 27 points nowadays is probably worth about 20 to 22 points in 2004, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But the league is so inflated with points that a 20-point per game score nowadays, just adjusting for the pace of play, would probably be a 14-point per guy in 2004. And I don't think anyone would rush to call a 15 to 14 point per game scorer an MVP or an all star or anything like that. Just like I think if we had a 20-point per game scorer back 20 years ago, you wouldn't rush to call him he's the greatest of all time. That makes you Larry Hughes.
Hey, shout out Larry Hughes.
Yeah, great player. But listen, it's
Um.
amazing what he's doing, and all these guys benefited from it too. KD benefits from it. Steph benefits it. Any guy that played in the mid 2000s, they definitely benefited from today. So it's a kind of like an asterisk because who knows? Maybe 20 years from now, the average points per game is going to be 145. And then you can see the same things with guys like Wemby. You can see like the same thing with Anthony Edwards and stuff like that. But like, oh wow, they've been scoring 30 points per game for the longest time. It's like, well, because 30 points per game isn't what it used to be, and we'll have the same conversation. But until that happens, yeah, it's great that he's doing it. He gets a lot of work in the off season. You can interpret that whatever way you want. And yeah, there's league inflation. He takes care of himself. And you know what? I will say one thing positive. He's never in the media. Not much for a
No.
parking ticket. So that's very commendable.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing of the media is I think the only thing that was scrutinized maybe was when Bronny got drafted. Maybe that
Yeah,
anything.
and that's just like it's whatever. Like
I
it's
mean,
nepotism.
yeah.
People do it all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, it's whatever. But
Um. I think that was the only thing I think that was damning about Houston in that series is that without Luca and Reeves for the most part. I mean, obviously Luca didn't play the entire series. They got Reeves back, I think, around Game 5. But I think that was the most damning part for Houston, even without Durant. On paper, they should still be the better team. against this Lakers team without Doncic on the floor. But LeBron and company did their job and got an uphill battle against OKC. Got a very, very uphill battle against the Thunder coming in the second round of the NBA postseason. And then finally, the Timberwolves knock off the Nuggets in 6 games, winning game 6, 110-98. They lose Anthony Edwards in this series to an injury, but despite that fact, Johnson, the Timberwolves really showed out in this series. They also lost Dante DiVincenzo at one point during this, and it really just came down to it felt like at times the Nuggets just had mental lapses. Jokic, you could argue, had some not great shooting performance numbers in this series. Jamal Murray, same goes for him. And guys like Jaden McDaniel stepped up. You saw Ayo Dosunmu had a 41-point game at one point during the series. Julius Randle did his work for the most part. Rudy Gobert was fine on the defensive front, and the Timberwolves, like I said it during I believe I said this during our preview. They're a good team, well rostered. I was concerned about where they go from here if with Chris Finch if they don't win this series, but they get the job done, and now they move on to the second round to take on San Antonio.
Yeah, this was definitely Jokic's worst playoff performance in the last decade, and it is what it is. The only guy Jokic has had the last 10 years is Jamal Murray. He's the only All Star he's had. He's never made it. He's hasn't even made an All NBA team. So when you want to criticize him for like, oh yeah, whatever, he didn't even beat a 50-win team during their playoff run. Even did Boston a couple years ago. Even did the bubble Lakers. So like, if you want to start criticizing him for like, oh, okay, he's never beat a 50-win playoff team. LeBron didn't win during that bubble run, and Boston's run a couple years ago. They didn't do the same thing either. You play who was in front of you, and unfortunately, it's unfortunate for the Nuggets, and you have to give the Timberwolves a lot of credit because they were down Anthony Edwards for a game, and it was looking like they would get reverse swept. Julius Randle stepped up, Jay McDaniel stepped up, Rudy Gobert was providing great defense against Jokic, which, by the way, Jokic only center in the league that has winning records against Wembanyama and Jokic. So Rudy Gobert would never guess that in your life, but it looks like wherever he goes, he seems to be a winner as he looks to go to another Western Conference Finals, but he has an uphill battle against him.
Yeah, and we talked about Anthony Edwards getting injured in this series. Obviously, the news coming last night, he was able to play Game 1 against the Spurs. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but tremendous job by Minnesota in this series to win the series, and their bench really, I think, in my opinion, I think the bench won this series for the Timberwolves for sure, for certain. Dosunmu initially wasn't a starter, but had to get inserted after the injuries. He stepped up huge for them. Got injured going into Game 6, did not play that game, and then I think it was Terrence Shannon Jr. Right, if I'm not mistaken.
That is
Um,
correct.
we saw him, thrive when he was playing at Illinois, and he looked like the guy we saw at Illinois just a couple of years ago last season. 24 points into the starting lineup in Game 6. Really had no answer for him on Denver. They could not stop his offensive prowess. His athleticism, his quickness. It didn't matter who they put on him. They just had no give in to go against him, and that really hurt them in this series. And you mentioned Jokic, not having really that number 2 counterpart. Murray was struggling the entire series. They lost Aaron Gordon at one point during the series to injury. And then you have Cam Johnson's probably your next best player, maybe, and Christian Vaughn did nothing this series for them either. He had a really, really quiet
His
series.
his extension kicks in too, by the way.
I know.
All $225 million.
Yeah. Not good. Not good. But he's not a bad player. It's just not a good look that he didn't step up before the money kicks in. So that's
He's got time, but time's ticking.
Yeah, the time definitely is ticking for that. So, Johnson, that leaves us then to the second round. We're not going to preview it just yet. We'll preview it a little bit later. It's Thunder and Lakers, the 1-4, and the bottom half it is Timberwolves and the Spurs in the 6-2. Now, let's go to the Eastern Conference. I guess we'll just start off with the Knicks because they were the first series that ended in the Eastern Conference, and I'm not going to lie. I think you'll agree with me. After Game 3, we were a bit worried because the way they lost Game 2 was abysmal. Had a big lead, and then they just collapsed towards the end against Atlanta, and CJ McCollum went off in that game.
Twice. Happened
Yeah,
twice.
I was going to get there. Game 3, they were losing for the majority of that game, came back to take the lead late, and then McCollum again hit a late game winning jump shot, and then the Knicks had a horrible possession to try to win the game at the very end. They lose Game 3 by 1 point. They lost both of their games by 1 point in this series, and then the series really shifted going into Game 4. The Knicks, making a little bit of some lineup adjustments. Um, they look dominant. I mean, OG Anunoby from Game 4 on looked like an insanely different player than what we saw for the beginning of the series, I guess you want to put it. And the Knicks just dominated on the next 3 games of this entire series. They win Game 4, 114 to 98. They had Game 5 won easily. What, they won by 29 points, I think it was, off the top of my
It
head.
wasn't even close.
And then Game 6, possibly the biggest blowout I probably have seen in my lifetime in terms of postseason games. The Knicks go on, what was it, a 63-19 run at some point in this game?
Yes, sir.
They were up 72 to 22 at one point in the second quarter. The Hawks could not make shots. They were turning the ball over. The Knicks weren't missing either. It was a game that you probably were thinking to yourself, is this real life? Am I really watching this game unfold the way it's unfolding? And that's exactly what happened. The Knicks win Game 6, 140 to 89. They beat the Hawks by 51 points. They were up 60 at one point in this game. And after Game 3, Johnson, they look like a completely different team. They move on into the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Yeah, Knicks in 6, Nick, just like we all drew it up.
Yeah, you and I both said it.
Yeah, we said Knicks in 6. We didn't say how we're going to get there. Always said, hey, it'd be Knicks in 6, and we would win at home.
Give us some trouble. Do we know our team? Do we know our team?
We do. We do. I'm very confident saying that we do know our team. So Knicks in 6 wasn't even a sweat. I definitely don't want to fire Mike Brown. Not at all.
Yeah, you never said that once during this series.
No, I definitely still don't want to fire him still either because,
Yeah, there was some. I had to talk you off, a couple times.
You had to talk me off the Chase Bridge.
Yeah, yeah. But I think like I said, them incorporating, play a lot, incorporating the bench a lot more during this series, I think really helped. But I think OG Anunoby stepping up the way he stepped up is also a big reason why they won, because he's looked like a completely different player. And
MVP of this team by far, most important player.
Like Brunson does what he has to do, and that's great. But you need that second guy to be there with him, and you're expecting it to be Cat. And Cat, I would say for the most part in this series, was fine in this series. Had a couple triple doubles against this Hawks team. Bridges was very hot and cold, mostly cold, but towards the end he got a little bit hot. I think that was another thing. I think after Game 4 is when he finally started to step up.
Yeah, and now he's really turned it on the last couple games.
Yeah, I mean when you have 3 plus 40s in your lineup after Game 6, you have plus 42 for OG, plus 40 for Bridges, plus 41 for Brunson, and then both Cat and Harwood plus 35, which is still pretty good. It shows you how big of a drubbing that game was. I don't know if we're going to see a game like that happen in a very long time. Like this is probably a once in an anomaly game that you won't see.
No, this is like one of the biggest blowouts in NBA history.
And I guess on the talk of the other side for the Hawks, I mean, I'll give them credit where credit is due. Once they traded Trae Young and a couple, and got rid of players, everyone was suspecting them to tank after that and go for a top player in the draft. And they changed their dynamic of the season. Like they went from a team that was probably going to be picking maybe in the top 5 to a team that finishes the 6th best team in the Eastern Conference. And there's definitely stuff that they can build on going into next season. Jalen Johnson is a really emerging star, in my opinion. Not really saying much. You still have a solid 5. McCollum looked like the CJ McCollum we saw in Portland in this series. Nickeil Alexander-Walker won 6th Man of the Year. Dyson Daniels, I know obviously our stance on him has changed after what happened with him and Mitchell Robinson in this game, but he's still a nice young emerging player for this Hawks team. So it wouldn't be surprising if they got back here next season. I feel like they're just. I guess what? Maybe they're looking for a 1A type of guy, maybe on this team that maybe can get them over
Looking
the
for
hump.
1A, and I don't know who it's going to be, but you got plenty of assets to go get him.
Yeah. I don't have much more other than that. Like I said, this was. Yeah, like I said, Game 6 was just a game I could not
This
believe.
was the biggest blowout in a 6 game series of all time. If 100, no, like statistically speaking, 100
Statistically
plus
speaking, yeah.
114. It's never been happened. It's never happened before. This team is plus 114 through 6 games.
Yeah.
That means in a 6 game series, get this, in a 6 game series, the average margin of victory was 19 points.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the craziest part. The Knicks were troubling them in each of their wins, and the 2 losses they lost by a point. They should have realistically probably swept, but
Oh,
we know
absolutely.
our team.
This was a I wouldn't even call it a gentleman's sweep because what happened in Game 6 wasn't gentlemanly at all. It was quite gruesome.
No, it was not. It was quite the opposite. It was quite the opposite way that game ended. Now, the other 3 series, Johnson, I'll leave it up to you which one you want to go into first because they all went to a Game 7. Now, there's an obvious one that maybe has people talking about a certain franchise and where they go from here. Um,
Let's
do you
talk
want to go to
about
that one first?
let's talk about Toronto Cleveland. Game
All right,
7
we'll go to that one
came
first.
down to the wire.
How about
Dramatics. The Game 6 goes into overtime with 1 second left on the clock, or I should say 5 seconds left on the clock. RJ Barrett looks like he's going to miss a 3-pointer, bounces all the way up, goes 2 meters in the sky above the shot clock, comes directly down. 1 second to go. Toronto by 2. They hold on, and then that leads them to Game 7, Nick, and break down what happened in Game 7.
Well, it was a game of 2 halves because this was back and forth in the first half between these two teams. It was tied going into halftime, and the difference of the game was the third quarter. The Raptors just really struggled in that third quarter from the get go. The Cavaliers putting up 38 points in that quarter while only holding the Raptors to 19. So that alone was the difference maker of this game, and unfortunately for Toronto, was the difference maker of this series. Obviously, the biggest news in the last 2 games of this series, or I think it was the last two, maybe it was just the last game, but they didn't have Brandon Ingram, and that really, really hurt Toronto. Losing a guy like that, that's a former All Star, not having him in the lineup definitely hurts in a game like this, and it kind of showed for the most part in this game. You're having to rely on a couple of big other bench players to get you some big time minutes, and Cleveland just got a really big, strong performance from a couple of different guys at the very end of the day. Mitchell puts up 22, Jared Allen put up 22, Harden, not great shooting numbers, but he got to the free throw line a bunch. Evan Mobley, he does what he has to do in terms of both his rebounding and passing, and he can score from here and there. So yeah, listen, I had Cavs in 6, very close to that getting done. They obviously got done 7. We expected this to be a long series, and that's exactly what it was. I think Toronto is a team that you have to watch out for the next couple of years. Obviously, Game 6 was incredible. It felt like wasn't the same trajectory of what Kawhi did in that 2019 season, but that game-winning jump shot against the Sixers in Game 7. But the way the ball bounced and went in and how they won it was insane. Like, it felt almost similar to that shot. And yeah, we'll see where Toronto goes from here. And for Cleveland, bit of a scare, but they do move on into the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. A really, really, really fun series for the most part in a couple of different games. Do we go to the 1-8 or the 2-7? What do you want to talk about next?
Let's go 1-8 only because
Okay.
it was such a historic collapse. I've never seen a collapse like this. And let's again start with Game 6. Let's paint the picture.
So before you do that, let's reiterate this. The first 4 games, in my opinion, were kind of unwatchable. I don't know if you felt the same way. They
Yeah,
literally they were like
very
there was
boring.
two there was 2 games that were single digit wins for either side, both of them coming from Orlando. But Game 4 was 94-88. Like, it was a bad game. Like, no one really could have should have won that game the way that the offense went. Game 5 got the juices going. Detroit was down 3-1. Cade Cunningham had his best game of the series. So does Paolo Banchero, but it wasn't enough for the Magic. They lose that game 116-109. Then you go into Game 6. I mean, I think everyone, including you, I mean, the way this game unfolded was incredible because Orlando goes into halftime with a 22-point lead. It looks like it's over. Detroit, no chance of a 3-1 deficit, come from behind series win. It's going to be over. The third quarter was not great for Orlando. They put up 11 points in the quarter, but still not all hope is lost. They're still going up into the fourth quarter, up double digits. So they still have a double-digit lead going into the fourth. They're up by, or actually no, they're up by 9 points. Excuse me, my math was wrong on that. They're up 9 points. Still a sizable lead going into the fourth quarter. And then they proceed to miss 23 straight shots. I think it was 45 minutes in real time. They had a field goal.
Yes,
At
and
one point.
the way I'm understanding is, this team won the honor the St. John's Red Storm for also missing 24 straight shots in a row. However, they didn't let us usurp their record, so that's why they stopped at 23.
And they would have gone 24 in a row if not for terrible Pistons paint defense. Paul got a dunk to end that streak. But I just couldn't believe the way the game was going. You know, it felt like every time Orlando, and it wasn't like Orlando was taking a lot of bad shots. They were taking some open shots. Like Detroit was giving up wide open threes, and everything was getting bricked. And you could just feel the tides turning every time they missed a shot. And Detroit went on the other end, and they were getting and ones. They were getting some big time buckets from Cade down the stretch, and they put up a 31-8 outscoring in the fourth quarter. Like 8 points in an NBA quarter is unheard of. I don't remember the last time that's happened. And Orlando did it in a playoff game where they had a chance to move on to the second round. And unfortunately for them, a chance for them to move on to the second round slipped away from their fingers. And now they had to go back on the road to Detroit for Game 7. It felt like once they lost that game, the life was pretty much drained out from this team. They had no chance going to Game 7. They lose Game 7, 116-94. Another big game from Cade Cunningham, who, as I said, did not have a strong start to this series. He really stepped up for this team the last 3 games after they were trailing 3-1. Paolo Banchero, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he did everything he possibly could to help Orlando win Game 7. They did not have a second option in that game. Desmond Bane was the closest second option they had, and even that was still not enough. And kind of what I expected after the play-in happened. You know, they fired Jamal Mosley. So now they are looking for a new head coach going into next season, but this is a really tough way to end the season if you're Orlando.
Yeah, to be up 24 points,
lose the way they lost.
Up 24 points at home, inexcusable.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what went through that locker room. You know what this team needs? This team needs Tom Thibodeau. This team needs Tibbs. He is a floor raiser. He's a player development specialist, developing guys like, even though D Rose had a talent, D Rose, Taj Gibson, Joakim Noah, Luol Deng. He's developed these guys. He's been excellent in the NBA. Even guys like Emmanuel Quickley, Deuce McBride. It was Tibbs. He developed them. Mitchell Robinson. Even though he was there, previous coaches, he really had breakout years with Tibbs, his best years with Tibbs. So, Tibbs would establish a culture. He would teach him how to play defense. He'd be a floor raiser. You're not going to get to the finals with Tibbs, but you'd probably be having this. You'd probably fire him in the conference finals and not after an embarrassing. His team would never go out
that gets you to the next step.
Yes, he's a great stopgap coach. It's Florida. He's of retirement age. He'll live in the gym. He'll be on the beach. This is his life. He's the right guy for this job.
Yeah, I think Orlando's in a tough spot because it's not that they can do anything during the draft. They've traded all those picks to get Desmond Bane. So whatever they do in terms of rerouting the team, it's going to have to be through different trades. Obviously, I think the biggest thing is right now what they do with either one of their guards and Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black. Like one of them is going to have to probably get traded because I believe it's Jalen Suggs that has a contract coming up. So they have to restructure or give him an extension potentially if they decide to keep him soon. So it sounds like one of them is probably going to go. Um, and without any picks to really trade, like you can't really do much in terms of that. I think getting a coach like Thibodeau would probably help a lot because I feel like having grit like that and a guy that can really help you on different sides of the ball will certainly provide a spark. Keep in mind also for Orlando, I didn't really mention this either. They didn't have Franz Wagner the last couple games in the series either. I think that really hurt them too. Like having Franz in that game six probably would have stopped that route maybe at some point of the missed field goals, but it's just a really abysmal way for your season to come down to an end because you had Detroit on the ropes a couple times and everything just deteriorated from you and you lose in probably the worst type of fashion you probably could lose, considering the fact that you had that big of a lead in game six on your own home court nonetheless. And Magic fans that were in attendance, they were obviously livid for what happened. Like you can't really blame them. Just a really bad way to end your season. So I'm not sure where they go from here. Detroit, we know where they're going to go at least now. They're going to move on to the second round to take on Cleveland. They're currently underway right now. They're playing in the second quarter. Is the Pistons on top so far? We'll break down the rest of that series a little bit later on. But we have one more series to recap, Johnson, before we go into those predictions. And that's the Sixers and the Celtics. Wow. That's all I can say. It looked like Boston after game four was gonna easily win. They win game one convincingly. They had an epic collapse in game two. The Sixers had a really big fourth quarter to win that game too. Then they win game three by 8. They dominated game four in terms of their 3-point shooting. Typical of what we've seen Boston over the last couple of years. They live and die by the 3-pointer. And they certainly, unfortunately, died in the next 3 games because of the 3-point shot shooting numbers. They lose game 5, 113-97. They lose game 6, 106-93. And then they go into game 7. They don't have Jason Tatum. They roll out a starting five that had not played together for a single minute the entirety of the season. And a bad first quarter put them in a big deficit. They got back into the second half. They were down by 1 point with under 3 minutes left in this game, but they could not make a wide open 3-point jump shot if their life depended on it, unfortunately. And unfortunately, it bit the Celtics in this game. They shoot 27% from the 3-point line, and they lose game 7, 109-100. So the Sixers pull off the 3-1 series comeback win. They beat the Celtics for the first time in the playoffs, I believe, since 1982, if I'm not mistaken. And it was because of a big couple of contributors. Joel Embiid was big for them for the majority of the series. Maxey, of course, did his numbers. Edgecombe had a really big game 7. And even Paul George had some couple big games in this series. But I guess the really big question, Johnson, before we talk about Philadelphia is where does Boston go from here after this?
Well, Joe Mazzulla was too busy watching The Town, his favorite movie.
He's too busy.
Jaylen Brown was too busy on Twitch.
Yeah, that was something. The day after, immediately going on Twitch to break down the game.
Listen, if I'm Boston, learn from your past. I should say, even say learn from your past, lean on your past. You should try to get 8 first-round picks for Jason Tatum. Do it. You're not going to win it with a score. Your bench is done. You're not. I hate to break it to you. The lineup of Luka Garza, Ron Harper, and Baylor Shireman is not going to win you a championship.
It might win you an NCAA championship.
It would. They were all fantastic college players. It's not going to win you an NBA championship.
No.
The fact that they started that lineup in Game 7 when they had 0 minutes during the regular season,
that was a typo.
Was mind blowing. It was mind blowing.
So
if I'm Boston, blow it up. I don't care what it takes. Get one of the top draft picks this year. A part of your Tatum package. Trade Brown. Try to get other picks for him. I know you're under the salary cap. Just blow it up. Try to get 12 first-round picks between the two of them. You can do it.
I think the problem for this team is this almost felt similar to last year when the Knicks played them, where they lived. And this has been the Celtics, mentality the last couple of years is that living and the dying by the 3-point shot. And for the most part, to their credit, it's gotten them a lot of wins over these last couple of seasons. It's gotten them a championship. That's fine and all dandy. But the way they've lost the last 2 seasons, they had the 2 epic collapses in the first 2 games against the Knicks last year. And then they just, they obviously were able to come back and make it interesting towards the end, but it felt like they never could really bounce back in full because of their 3-point shooting. And then in this series, like I said, after game 4, it was done. It looked like it was over. Boston beat them by 30 plus, and then they just could not shoot the rest of the 3 games, even with Tatum playing game 5 and playing in game 6. You obviously could tell he was playing injured, and that's why he wasn't able to play game 7.
Yeah, and
And
by the way, his Achilles, he looked good during the series, but like he's never gonna be the same player again.
no, 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 that's an insanely tough injury to come back from. I don't know. Boston's in a weird spot where they could blow it up, but I don't see them doing it. I don't think they're at that point right
Blow
now.
it up, get the picks, get the prospects. If I'm Boston and you can get a top 5 pick in this draft for Jason Tatum plus futures, you should take that pick.
I mean, yeah.
If you can get a top 10 pick plus Jaylen Brown and futures, do it.
If
You
there was a
draft
year to
Boston
do it this year.
Yeah, Brad Stevens drafts well enough where there's plenty of talent in the top 10. Potentially, if you're Boston, if you can get AJ Dabansa and you can get maybe Darius Acuff, why wouldn't you want that as your future pick and roll?
Right.
And then next year, you're going to have some really great players next year too in the draft. So why wouldn't you want those two? Give the fans a reason to come to the arena. And honestly, it's the Eastern Conference. You're probably still, with those two, you're probably still ahead of 10 other teams. So you're still at least looking for a playing spot. Get some vets to maybe fill up the front court because, Vooch isn't going to do it for you. I would just go all in with the rebuild. You got your championship. Tatum's not going to be isn't going to be the same again. Brown is clearly not the guy. Blow it up. Get some picks this year. Get picks for the future. And maybe if 2 or 3 years down the line, as crazy it sounds, you have, again, this is fantasy land, you have Acuff and Dabansa, and you have a bunch of picks available, and you have the cap space, you can just bundle all those picks, get a superstar, congratulations, finish your championship window, reopen again, rather than just kind of wallow in mediocrity for the next couple of years. Because you know what? With the Knicks, if they don't do it this well, if they don't get this, go to the finals this year either, I'm going to tell them to blow it up too. Because this is another.
I know you are.
So listen, it's fair between both these teams, and if I'm Boston, I would blow it up.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know where they realistically go from here. Like I said, I don't think they're going to blow it up, but it might be in their best interest maybe to think about doing stuff like that. I talk more about the Sixers, but I think we'll get into that when we talk about the second round matchups because we're about to preview the second round of the NBA postseason. We did have 2 games, as I mentioned earlier on in our show, did take place last night. The Knicks and the Sixers took part in their first game of the second round. And after a 51-point drubbing of Atlanta, the Knicks put up beating the the Sixers by 30 plus points. Another game in which they just looked dominant. Like they did from start to finish. It was a very, very, very rough start for Philadelphia. But I think with the 1-day rest after winning an emotional series like that, probably doesn't help them in that grand scheme of things. But I guess for the rest of this series, Knicks already up 1-0. Where do you have this series going?
I had Knicks in 5 before this. They're gonna. I said last night they were gonna win 3 in a row. Philly's gonna take the 4th on Mother's Day, and then they're gonna come back to the Garden and finish it up there.
I had the Knicks in 6 in this series also before it started. As I mentioned in the previous series with Atlanta, I think the same thing's probably going to happen this series. They're going to have chances to potentially win it at home and get some traction, and they're not going to make it easy. They never do, unfortunately. So I have a feeling they're probably going to clinch it like they did the last time they played the Sixers, and they clinch it in Philadelphia. Um, MSG East, if you want to ask Joel Embiid, uh, which was an insane statement to say, but I got Knicks and 6 in this series. Hopefully, I'm right about that. Hopefully, I'm right about that. The other Eastern Conference series, you have the number 1 seed Pistons, the number 4 seeded Cleveland Cavaliers. As I mentioned, that game's currently going underway. Detroit is up 41-29, 41-30, excuse me, with 8:44 to go in the first half. Regardless of what the outcome of this game is, Johnson, who do you have winning in this series?
I had Cavs in 7.
I'm going to go Cavs in 6 in this one. I think on paper they just have the better players. Harden, Mobley, Allen, Donovan Mitchell. If you're gonna trust me to go up against this Pistons team, like, listen, I think Detroit has exceeded a lot of expectations this season. Won 60 games, but I just don't know if this is a good match. Like, I think they were hoping that Toronto would win that game 7, and the fact that that didn't happen, I think that's gonna potentially hurt them in this series. So I have Cleveland in 6 games. I think you and I both agree it's going to be Cavs and Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's
Yeah.
go on to the Western Conference Finals side of things. Start off with I guess let's start off with the game that happened last night too, because we had the Spurs and Timberwolves take place last night, and the Timberwolves get Anthony Edwards back, and they stun the Spurs in that first game to take a 1-0 series lead. They won 104-102. What do you have going the rest of the way in this series?
I got San Antonio in 6. I had that before it. I'm not going to change it. Feel like it'd be disingenuous. So give me Spurs in 6 here.
I have San Antonio in 7. I think this is going to be a phenomenal series. I said even if Denver won, no matter who the Spurs were going to get in the second round, it was going to be an incredible series regardless between Denver or Minnesota. I expect this to be a 7-game series. You have Anthony Edwards back. That's going to help a lot for the Timberwolves in this series. But I just think at the end of the day, the Spurs they were my team out of the Western Conference to begin with. When we did our playoff preview a couple weeks ago, I have the Spurs making it out of that round and move on to the Western Conference Finals, where they'll take on either OKC, the number 1 seed, and the number 4 seed of Los Angeles Lakers, who will play later on tonight. Who do you have in that series?
Give me Thunder in 5.
I'm unfortunately right with you on that one. Thunder in 5. I can't believe I want the Lakers to win. I want the Lakers to win, but they're not going to. I'm just I'm not I'm I like the Thunder last season, getting that feel good story, getting the championship, and then I kind of just like faded away from me during this entire season. I don't know. My stance on them has changed, unfortunately, which is surprising after 1 year already. But Thunder at 5, I'm with you on that. We both have Thunder and Spurs, so we have the same exact conference finals matchup. That shouldn't come back to bite us whatsoever in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Let's start off with the East Finals. Who do you have in that series?
Oh boy, I got the Cavs, Nick.
Wonder why you take that.
Got the Cavs.
Any reason?
No reason. Got the Cavs.
I'm just gonna say Knicks. I know. If it comes back to bite us, I'll probably get blamed for it. I got to pick them at this point. If it's Cleveland and New York again, I mean, the last time we saw that series, obviously the quote from Jared Allen was the lights were too bright. They're going to expect it this time around if it comes down to those two teams in the East. But for my sake, I would like to see the Knicks in the finals. They got very, very close last season, and unfortunately, things did not go their way. I don't want to miss out on a chance this season, so give me New York in the NBA Finals. And then you have Cleveland. Who do you have the Cavs taking on in the West?
San Antonio, with San Antonio wing it all.
I also have the Spurs, and I have to make a new champion pick because of the Celtics getting eliminated, so I will also go with San Antonio. So sorry, Spurs fans. You are probably in trouble. But I really love what this team, the Spurs team, is. I would love to pick the Knicks, but I'm not going to go too full in and try to jinx them in that way. The Spurs are just an incredible team. Incredible turnaround that they've had in this last couple seasons of rebuilding. But we'll see. So that's going to do it, Johnson, for the first round. Our first round recap and our second round preview. We are getting very close to the end of the NBA season. 8 teams remain. 4 will move on to the conference finals. Any final takeaways before we wrap this one up?
Knicks to the Eastern Conference Finals. We're gonna fire him, and then we're gonna trade Brunson for Giannis, and then we're getting Steve Kerr, and then I wake up.
I didn't know you were playing 2K last night.
I was.
Were you actually?
No.
Okay, good. You don't want to do that. So, yeah, we'll see. Maybe that 2K pipe dream could happen for Johnson if that really is to be the case. But it should be an incredible next couple weeks in the NBA postseason. As I mentioned, second round action has already gotten underway. And once that second round action concludes, Johnson and I will be back to recap the second round of the NBA postseason and give our predictions for the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. But as for this episode, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. The first round of the NBA postseason has concluded. We now move on into the second round. Pistons and Cavs, Knicks and the 76ers, Thunder and the Lakers, Spurs and the Timberwolves. One of these 8 teams will win an NBA championship at the very end of the season. Who will be the next 4 teams to move on to the respective conference finals? For Nicholas Pavona and Andrew Johnson, this has been the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.